like and subscribe, and leave a comment below. The human heroes of the frontier. In the quiet, early hours of the morning, the frontier outpost of New Hope was suddenly plunged into chaos. Without warning, explosions rocked the settlement. The inhabitants, mostly settlers and a handful of military personnel, scrambled to respond to the onslaught. What they initially thought to be a malfunction or a drill quickly turned into a desperate struggle for survival. An unknown alien race, later dubbed the Zaran, had launched a full-scale assault with their motives and origins shrouded in mystery. Captain B.N.Rocker, the commander of the outpost, was jolted awake by the shrill sound of the emergency sirens. Barely pausing to grab his gear, he raced to the command center, barking orders to his team. The initial shockwave had knocked out the main communications array and they were operating on emergency power. As the screens flickered to life, Rocker took in the grim situation. The Zaran ships hovered ominously overhead, raining down destruction. "All units, to your battle stations," Rocker commanded. The settlers, many of whom had never seen combat, were thrust into the role of defenders. The first wave of Zaran ground troops broke through the perimeter. The settlers, guided by Rocker's tactical expertise, managed to hold them off long enough for reinforcements to mobilize. The initial defense was brutal, with casualties mounting on both sides. The Zaran, with their advanced technology and superior numbers, seemed unstoppable. Captain B.N.Rocker was a veteran of the United Earth Federation, having served in numerous campaigns against various threats. He had been stationed at New Hope for the past year, tasked with overseeing the security of the settlement and fostering relations with other frontier outposts. The settlers of New Hope were a diverse group, drawn together by the promise of a new beginning on the frontier. Among them were farmers, engineers, scientists, and traders, all united by their shared dream of building a better future. They had faced numerous challenges since establishing the outpost, from harsh environmental conditions to occasional skirmishes with rogue human factions, but nothing had prepared them for the ferocity of the Zaran attack. In the days following the initial assault, Captain Rocker realized that conventional warfare would not suffice against the Zaran. They needed to adapt, and quickly. Drawing on his military experience, Rocker devised a series of guerrilla tactics aimed at disrupting the enemy's operations. Small, mobile units were formed, comprised of the most agile and resourceful settlers. These teams conducted hit-and-run attacks, targeting Zaran supply lines and communications. Realizing that the fight could not be won by New Hope alone, Captain Rocker set out to unite the scattered frontier settlements. He sent messengers to neighboring outposts, urging them to join forces against the common threat. It was a risky move. Many of these settlements were isolated and wary of outsiders, but Rocker's reputation and the urgency of the situation worked in his favor. A council was convened, bringing together representatives from various settlements. Rocker's impassioned plea for unity resonated with the leaders, and a coalition was formed. The newly allied settlements pooled their resources and manpower, creating a formidable resistance force. They shared intelligence and coordinated their efforts, launching coordinated strikes against the Zaran. With the alliance in place, the human resistance intensified their guerrilla warfare tactics. They executed daring ambushes on Zaran patrols, using the element of surprise to their advantage. Sabotage missions targeted the aliens' advanced machinery, crippling their ability to sustain the assault. One particularly daring mission involved infiltrating a Zaran supply depot. A team of settlers, disguised in scavenged alien armor, managed to breach the heavily guarded facility. They planted explosives and escaped just as the charges detonated, causing a massive explosion. The success of these missions boosted morale among the human defenders. Despite their successes, the human resistance faced a constant struggle for resources. The Zaran attack had disrupted supply lines, and the frontier settlements were running low on food, medical supplies, and ammunition. Captain Rocker knew that securing these vital resources was crucial for their survival. The settlers organized expeditions to scavenge what they could from abandoned settlements and wrecked ships. These missions were perilous, often leading deep into enemy territory. Many brave men and women risked their lives to bring back supplies. Their determination was fueled by the knowledge that their efforts were keeping the resistance alive. As the conflict dragged on, the Zaran focused their efforts on a critical outpost that served as a hub for the human resistance. This outpost, known as Fort Epsilon, was strategically located and heavily fortified. The Zaran launched a relentless assault, determined to crush the human spirit once and for all. Captain Rocker and his forces prepared for what they knew would be a brutal battle. The settlers fought with an unwavering resolve, knowing that the fate of the frontier rested on their shoulders. The battle for Fort Epsilon was fierce. Waves of Zaran troops clashed with the human defenders as the night sky was illuminated by the flashes of gunfire and explosions. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, the settlers held their ground. As dawn broke, the Zaran launched one final, desperate assault. Captain Rocker, leading from the front, rallied his troops for a last stand. The settlers, exhausted but undeterred, fought with everything they had. The alien forces launched waves of mechanized infantry. The human defenders, armed with whatever they could muster, fired handheld rockets and lobbed grenades. The air was filled with explosions and the scent of burning flesh. The situation grew dire as the aliens pressed closer, overwhelming the outpost's defenses. Just as defeat seemed inevitable, the enemy began to falter, their lines breaking under the intense assault. Captain Lee Rocker's voice rang out, a rallying cry that electrified the defenders. "Now, everything we got, throw it at them." Fueled by his unyielding spirit, the settlers unleashed a ferocious counterattack, fighting with a tenacity that would be remembered for generations. In a stunning display of bravery and tenacity, they managed to repel the Zaran forces, inflicting heavy casualties and forcing a retreat. The victory at Fort Epsilon was a turning point in the conflict. The Zaran, now wary of the humans' resourcefulness, began to withdraw their forces. The frontier settlements, united by their shared struggle, stood ready to defend their newfound peace. In the aftermath of the battle, Captain Rocker addressed the assembled settlers, his voice filled with pride. "We have faced the darkness and emerged victorious," he declared. "Together, we have proven that this is our home, and we will defend it with our lives." The settlers, though scarred by the conflict, were filled with hope. They had forged a bond of unity and strength that would endure. As they began the arduous task of rebuilding, they knew that they were not just settlers, but heroes of the frontier. They knew that not all new species they encountered would be friendly, and this hard-fought victory had taught them an invaluable lesson. Every new challenge on Epsilon Prime would need to be met with the same tenacity, courage, and unity that had seen them through the Zaran assault. The settlers understood that their future would be filled with unknowns, but they also knew that together they could face and overcome any threat that arose. The resilience they had forged in the fires of battle would be their greatest strength in the uncharted days ahead. This is not goodbye, nor the end. Until the story continues, my friends, B.N.Rocker.